to another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. This is a podcast dedicated to educating and empowering women from preconception, pregnancy, birth, and through early motherhood on wellness lifestyle. I'm your host, Dr. Lara Brayton. I'm a maternity pediatric chiropractor, functional medicine practitioner, and mother who has hand-selected experts in natural holistic healthcare specialties to shine light on options and choices during this exciting phase of a woman's life. Today, we are focusing on the topic of movement for life through the LYT method, and I have the honor of interviewing guest Lara Heimann. For over 30 years, Lara has been a physical therapist and yoga teacher specializing in neuroscience and habit formation. She created a comprehensive movement method combining physical therapy techniques, yoga, functional movement, stress reduction, strength training, and mobility exercises as a necessary tool for modern day lifestyles, and teaches online at international workshops, retreats, and for corporate wellness. At age 18, Lara laced up her sneakers and started a marathon she hadn't trained for. At mile 20, she realized that the only thing that could stop her was her own mind. She's kept her eye on the finish line ever since and has gone on to teach her yoga method to over 25,000 students in 53 countries. And you can find more about her on social media at Lara Heimann. It's LARAHEIMANN, or at her website, lytyoga.com. That's LYTyoga.com. Hi, Lara. Welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Lara.
Yeah. So we're both into body work. As I'm a chiropractor, you're a physical therapist, and you've created the LYT method, LYT, that combines yoga with physical therapy, which is quite unique. So I'd love for you to share with the listeners about kind of your exploration, your journey as a practitioner, and how you fused these modalities and came up with your own method.
Well, thank you for that. I always love talking about the story because I think that we're all kind of guided by our own curiosity and experience, and then the education piece. So I have been a physical therapist and yoga teacher for almost 3 decades, 30 years. And I'd always loved fitness and wellness, been very athletic, had taught various exercise forms like high impact aerobics and step and spinning. And when I found yoga, I was really mesmerized by the way it made me feel like when I was running, how it really brings you into this awareness of your body, tuning you in. So I immediately wanted to teach it and share it. And so I started teaching it. And simultaneous to that, I was getting my postgraduate specialization in what's called neurodevelopmental training, which is just essentially capitalizing on neuroplasticity, the ability for the brain to change and grow or not based on the input it's giving. And so I was working with brain injured patients, whether it was a stroke or brain injury, and working on developmental moves and kind of feedback and demand challenge put on their body to help the motor deficits. So in other words, to help the area that was affected get different inputs so the brain would start to neural wire more activation to that area. And when I was teaching yoga, I was doing that at night or in the morning, and then I was doing this by day, the physical therapy, and I kind of kept them separate. And I just kind of had this moment where I thought, there's such improvement with these people who have deficits, and we all have kind of some kind of deficit or imbalance, let's say, because modern day life just pretty much does that to us, and so what would it be like if I brought some of these tools into the yoga practice? Because I was feeling some of the yoga practice was a little bit, had some parameters to it. And I'm really like one of these, like, let's bring in all the tools. So I started doing that. And in my own practice and in my students, saw a big difference. And the reason why I really saw the difference is that when people, the way you stand, move, sit, starts to become what your brain recognizes, and that becomes the neural mapping, your brain mapping. So it's almost like a GPS. So then when people would come and practice yoga, they have that already existing map, and that's going to be guiding the way they actually move. So if you were sitting or standing and your pelvis is kind of tipping forward and your ribs are moving forward or rounding back or whatever, then that's what your movement patterns are going to tend to be. So you'll tend to kind of move from your rib cage a lot in this kind of thrusting way to bring your arms up. And I saw that and I thought, well, why don't we use the mat as a way to rewire some of those less optimal habits, the way we stand and move, because that affects the way we breathe. It affects our pelvic floor. It affects our core. It affects our nervous system. And so really just kind of turn the mat as being your time on the mat as an opportunity to learn. And I think that's really what LYT is distinct in this world of fitness and yoga, is we really educate. We're educating people. I just taught a class this morning and people were like, oh, I had an aha moment about broadening in the back ribs, and we're not just telling poses or taking people through moves or exercises, but we're giving them feedback for how to do that using their own hands, using the terminology, teaching people about the body, because most people besides you and I haven't learned about the body. Our kids didn't learn about it in grade school. We didn't learn about it in high school. And it is our longest relationship we're going to have with anyone or anything is with our body. And it's unfamiliar. So what I want people to do, in short, is to feel at home in their body.
That's beautiful. I mean, that just sounds so empowering. You're just, when you know more, you can do better, right? And I think really what you're also doing is just taking this unconscious movement that people do throughout their life and really bringing it to their consciousness of, are those patterns you're doing serving you or not, right? And how can we improve on them so that we don't accelerate aging and pain and other dis-ease patterns that are occurring from lifestyle?
You just said it exactly. I always say to people, if you've ever looked at a picture from vacation that you weren't kind of aware somebody was taking, and you're like, that's what I like, we don't know what we look like. We don't know, besides when we're doing stuff in the mirror, we don't know how we hold ourselves, how we move until we see something like that. And that's where, like you said, it's the unconscious habits that form, and we all have them. And that's, and that's what I really want people to embrace, is this should be a lifestyle of movement and inquiry, be just like you would worry about how much water you're going to drink or brush your teeth every day or take a shower. Like, this is part of that, is that we have to constantly be aware of how the environment around us, how our history and our movement patterns have influenced us. But the great news is, with neuroplasticity, is you can always improve it. You can always capitalize on the biomechanics of the body to actually have more energy, to be more efficient, which, to your point, is going to stave off disease of the joints, of not moving as well. When you don't move as well, it affects every system in your body. So really amplifies, that's what LYT is about. It's feeling lit up. We all want to feel more energized, lighter. We want to age with that. We want to come into pregnancy with that, recover from pregnancy from that. And that's possible because when we learn about ourselves.
Right. So I'm just thinking of a woman who is planning, let's say, to get pregnant in the next 6 to 12 months, how doing this type of work before the pregnancy occurs, where there's so many massive changes that occur in the musculoskeletal system, how she could be set up for a better, successful, healthier pregnancy just from getting her body, it's doing that preconception work of really preparing her system for carrying this extra load.
Yes. I mean, it's like, if I'm just walking in my daily life, that's one thing. But if I go on a long, which I've done many of these, long 1 or 2 week trips carrying a backpack, that's different. Right? So if I'm more primed in how I move in daily life, then adding some kind of extra a demand and endurance, I'm going to be more primed for that, more capable of managing that. And so prepping for pregnancy is like getting to know your body better and getting to know the structures of how, you stand, especially the alignment of the pelvis, because those things will be impacted. Your rib cage is going to be impacted with the growing uterus. And setting it up, the foundation of good mechanics and posture ahead of time is, I've seen this time and time again. We have had so many pregnant women come through and keep doing our pretty demanding practice throughout their entire pregnancy. Of course, they change it and modify it with a growing baby. And then their recovery, that's the other thing, is you have to look at this as it is, it's been compared to a marathon and all that, but it's like you have to prepare and then take care of yourself during it, keep moving the same way. We're not, disabled women, which a lot of times that's been presented. We're very capable in pregnancy. And then afterwards is recovering our function and recovering our connection. So it's 3 stages, really.
It is. Do you want to share a little bit about your own pregnancy story, birth story, and postpartum recovery?
Yeah, so I've had 2 kids, and both my kids were 8 and 8.5 pounds. I was teaching yoga and practicing physical therapy with both of them. And pregnancy, I don't want to say it was easy because, it's just different, right? And I would say the hardest part for me by far was my first trimester with my daughter, because I was just nauseous all day. And I was working in a clinic and I listened to my body. I rested a lot more then. I stopped running. I stopped doing some things because it just didn't feel right on my body. And I will say I had been a runner before my first pregnancy, and I never really came back to running. And it wasn't because of that. It was because I had listened to my body, and it felt a lot better to do other forms of kind of aerobic bouncing activities. I do plyo and all those things, no problem. But so I think that's what you also develop, is that inner listening. What feels right? And what feels right pre-pregnancy might not feel as good, as long as you're doing it from a place of, I've gotten my balance back and I've decided from that place, I don't really want to do it, versus, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to leak kind of thing. So with both of mine, I moved right up. I was doing my practice. I was doing all kinds of exercise and working as a PT right up until the birth. With my daughter, typical first child was a long, long labor. And I think my endurance and ability to stay kind of centered for that long, long labor was because of all the pre-work I had done. My recovery, and then my labor with my son was very short and quick and fiery, and much better that way. I will say, long, slow pain is not good, because your mind is the first to be like, what's going to happen? Like, just take this baby out. Both of them were vaginal births. And, my recovery is going to be different than anybody else's, but it was very easy. I got back to, I knew like, I don't have to do a lot, but I can start doing some small things. So I started within a few weeks getting on the ground and doing some of the developmental work, which is what we call in LYT our reset. The reset is reestablishing neutral spine, neutral pelvis, and core dynamic stability. And so doing that stuff on the floor is incredibly helpful, because not only are you getting a lot of feedback from the floor, you're also getting a lot of support for the center of mass, which is your pelvis. So reestablishing the connection between the ribs and pelvis after birth, super important. And whether you do that like with a physical therapist, or you go and take a class that they need to really reorganize, it's reorganizing that connection. The rib cage is the big thing that moves the most. And talk about getting used to something. Unconsciously, what I've seen a lot postnatal is, because the ribs have moved forward and then they've splayed open, that's what your brain knows, right? And so there's no baby in there anymore, but that's the position you've been in. And so that'll be the first thing I attend to when I'm working with postnatal, is how to bring their rib cage back over their pelvis, reestablish the connection to all the different layers of the abdominals and the pelvic floor, which is it's the bottom of the core. So my own pregnancy was easy. Like, I never had any issues at all. And then the recovery that's really the main thing. The recovery was, I took it easy, but I was back doing things within 2 months, feeling really strong. And again, that's a timeline that does not have to, like, everybody's different. But if you set yourself up well in the perinatal stage, the recovery that is really what you're looking at, is you will recover better. Even if your birth is more dramatic, even if you have a C-section, all of those things, the recovery still will be better if you set yourself up well.
That's right. It's so true. Going into the pregnancy fit, strong, healthy, will just help your body heal. There's a healing that occurs for every woman that gives birth, right? No matter what type of birth you have, your body has to heal and recover. Healing always happens better if you've given your body good nutrients and it's healthy, right? So it's like, what does your body need to be healthy? And that work preconception is so valuable. I just see it time and time again, right? There's less complications during the pregnancy, during the birth, and certainly postpartum as well.
And you're tuned in, every time you pay attention to the quality of your movement, you're improving your brain and body communication. And that is essential, because then you're going to notice things and you'll notice shifts, but that's a good thing to notice. Like I said, when you notice that, when you recover, you're going to know, like, oh, my ribs need to be moved back. Oh, I need to lengthen my spine. I need to open the chest from breastfeeding and all that. There's a lot of different elements. So it's that awareness. You're heightening the communication between your brain and body, which is hugely important for movement.
It really is. And, I'm thinking about diastasis recti, which is something so common during and after pregnancy. I'm a Tupler technique trainer. So we teach people as they're closing their diastasis recti to knit your ribs in, right? So, it's like talking about like avoid activities that are going to splay your ribs, but pregnancy splays the ribs, right? That's not necessarily you're not choosing to do it.
Everyone is going to have diastasis recti. That's going to happen. So
yeah. So how can we heal it and recognize that it's important to heal? It's not something that you have to live with, having a mummy tummy and that little, you feel like, oh my, I'm embarrassed of my abs. It's like, no, this is something that can be recovered. It's about healing that weak connective tissue and bringing those recti muscles back to the midline. To do that, we have to learn how to knit those ribs in. And then, like you said, the bottom, which is the pelvic floor, just bringing it all back together.
Yes. We use those cues too and the thing is, we've had people years postnatal, and on our online platform, we have a wonderful postnatal program and a set of classes. And I will tell people that have never had kids, that are 10 years out from having kids, men, like, it is so good because it is the real integration and organization of the ribs and pelvis. And because there's men out there who splay their ribs.
That's right.
Because, they get really tight in their back, and that's the way they lift their shoulders. They don't develop diastasis recti, although men can get it, but they don't know how to get that deeper core connection to stabilize the ribs against the movement. That's really what the transverse are doing, is they're doing the knitting so that you can lift the ribs up, get space between your pelvis and ribs, but not thrust them forward.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is awesome. I mean, and I think that's the other thing, is a lot of times when women are going back to working out, they've gotten their 6-week postpartum checkup, they're cleared to exercise, and, they're like, how do I get rid of this belly, right? So they're wanting to do crunches. They're doing exercises that actually are making their diastasis recti worse, because they don't know how to use their transverse muscle, and they don't know how to, like you said, that connection between the ribs and the pelvis is like so foreign, right? They're just so out of their body. So this type of work, like a postnatal class that's teaching women how to connect this area, is so wonderful.
Yeah, we really, in one of the classes, I spend the entire time, in every class we have a theme so that we can really cue to that theme. Even though we're moving in a variety of ways, we'll still be thinking about it. So that one theme is, think about a cross stitch. It's a basic X formation, and that would be from your left lower rib to your right pelvic point, and from your right lower rib to your left pelvic point. And then you just kind of tighten that. And then how do you hold that? How do you hold it when you're in quadruped on all fours? You don't round your back, which makes you tighten your abdominals, but it isn't going into the deeper layers and stabilizing the spine and ribs. So the deeper muscles, we call them the proximal muscles, and that's why we do the reset. They're really to activate those, because when we develop from being a baby to coming bipedal, we have to develop those muscles closest to the bones for stability so that we won't be floppy babies trying to stand on 2 feet. We have stability there. And that's why we go back to the ground and do this reset to reestablish that. So as you come out of pregnancy, just doing some small but really challenging stability work is a great way to start to get that activation. And you'll feel, you're doing it if you feel a quiver, because they've been stretched, they've been snoozy, and that quiver is the kind of signal, oh, I'm doing that deep work that is so essential. I don't have to go and do big crunches, which is not going to do that deep work. It could be being a quadruped and lifting a leg behind you without your ribs moving or pelvis moving and getting that cross stitch action in place. And then you can take it into bigger movement, whether it's a plank position or doing some slow lunges without letting that stitch burst.
Right. So slow, methodical. You're really just connecting back to that torso midsection that is almost a disconnect during the pregnancy, right? Like you're connected to your baby, but not so much all the other muscles, tendons, ligaments, organs even that have just kind of got pushed to the side to make space for that developing fetus. So it's such a beautiful thing to kind of just get back to that core, that center, that third chakra, right? I mean, that's another important thing. Our powerhouse.
Yeah, it's our metaphysical powerhouse. It's our motivation and our ambition and our fire is all in that area. And that you can feel that, like from an energy perspective, both metaphysical and biomechanical, that your core is the transmitter of energy. So I always talk about it, think of an insulator. Like if you're insulating something, you don't want any frays in the wire, right? That you plug something in and you want that insulated cord. Well, that insulated cord is essentially your core. And so we want that to be stable dynamically. That doesn't mean it doesn't move, but it doesn't move when we are intentionally trying to stabilize it.
Wow, that's amazing. So if you have women that are, like you said, sometimes many years postpartum now, and they're going through even some now, like let's say perimenopause, right? There's some hormonal stuff going on. How does this work help them to just strengthen, connect, and stabilize and age gracefully?
Well, I mean, as a menopausal woman, I'm 55, I can speak to this a lot. And again, I had a very easy transition, and some of it I'm sure is genetic. Some of it is my lifestyle. Absolutely.
Oh, I'm going to give your lifestyle a bigger shout out.
So I have a really holistic lifestyle, and that's just, again, to me, health is number one. My health is number one over anything I do, because my health impacts my relationships, it impacts my business, it impacts my energy, it impacts my vitality, it impacts my personality. So I think first, the biggest thing I implore women is let's stop this centuries old conditioning that we need to take care of everyone else before we take care of ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves first, unapologetically.
Yes.
Unapologetically.
And this is not selfish behavior. This is being self-love. This is loving ourselves.
Absolutely. In fact, I would even say it's selfish if you don't, because of how much it impacts everything. So whatever way you want to frame it, number one, like your health is number one. I'm going to spend money on my health, on what I eat, on what I put in my body, on how I move my body, and that's going to come over anything else, right? So that has impacted the way that I've aged for sure. I'm moving as well as I did, if not even better, in my 20s and 30s, just because I've had more years of practice. If you read regularly, you are a really good reader. You become a faster reader. You absorb more. Like you practice these things. And that is one thing we also do on the mat is there's repetition, because the repetition is laying down those neural pathways stronger. You have to do those things intentionally, because there's a lot, like you said, unconscious that you don't do or that you do, and that lays down stuff. So you're always kind of working to give yourself, the maximum benefit. So for aging, the priority has to become your health even more. because you know that there's going to be changes, and those changes are changes. They don't have to be bad changes. That's the other thing is like, there's so much benefit of aging, of having different perspective and wisdom and experience. And you can feel wonderful about that if you've done the work, like in your prenatal stages. You're doing this for, like, I am wanting to move well, and everything I'm doing is based on my ability to move well in 10, 20 years. So I'm not doing something like just for today. So when you're thinking of exercise, if you're doing something that like gives you aches or makes you really sore or feels like it's like trauma on your body, that's not just like, think about exercising for your future self as well. So the main thing I would say is like, when you're aging, you need to move more. That's the thing. People automatically assume they're going to move less. You have to move more. Doesn't mean you have to do 2 hours of workout. It just means you need to move more frequently, more purposefully. It can be for shorter buckets of time. And you need to do this work that we're doing daily, and it can be, you need to mobilize your joints. You need to work on your core stability in a functional way. So crunches are not functional, right? But lifting yourself up and coming up to one hand and standing up on your feet, that is functional. So that kind of movement pattern, that kind of core work is great. There's so many ways of like moving and when I dynamically stretching. I'm not a huge proponent of held static stretches because research continues to show, and you can feel the difference. Dynamically stretching is more functional. What that means is functional is more like what you're going to experience in your daily life. So like long holds of a stretch have a short-term benefit, whereas dynamically stretching, which involves moving your joints in multiple ways and stretching the connective tissue that surrounds it while stabilizing your center, is going to help you feel young and flexible in the ways you want to. So doing all of those things, mobilizing, moving a lot, raising your heart rate up, getting a little sweat in every day, super important. And then adding, one thing that more research is showing is adding purposeful load. So weight bearing is a form of strength training. You can also additionally add some load to that, some weights. So 2 days a week, I add extra load. I do every day, I'm doing weight bearing on my hands. If you look at our classes, they're very demanding. We do handstands if you want, you don't have to. We do planks, we're doing side plank, we're doing all the different things where you're getting loaded down through the hand. The reason we do a lot of work on the hands is it goes back to those developmental things. You develop shoulder, and the scapula is part of the shoulder. You develop those muscles when you have weight bearing through the hands. Yes, you can develop them with weights and not on the hands, but you get so much more bang for your buck when you get your weight through the hands. And we definitely need to do that because in menopause, people can get lots of different aches. And those, to me, those aches are just underused areas. Those are not areas you don't want to use. So if you get an ache in your low back, if you get an ache in your wrist, that just means you've got to use those more, not less.
Fascinating. I have so many perimenopausal women in my office coming in with these random, women I've been caring for maybe for years, or they're new, and it's like, oh, I got a frozen shoulder, or, my stuff like really starts to freak out with these hormonal changes. And, there's definitely some, I would say these women in general are depleted, and there's stress stuff there that kind of precipitates that. It's not just perimenopause, right? But it's scary when they're like, I can't lift my shoulder anymore, and
frozen shoulder is very unique to menopausal women. Very few men get it. A few do, but it is primarily women who are going through that, and they don't fully understand. But the theory is, and I've treated so many women with frozen shoulders, the theory is your body is in that hormonal shift. It's responding in like almost an autoimmune way, like an over response. And what it does is the brain registers that there's something wrong with your shoulder, and you stop moving it because there's like some little pains. And before you know it, if you're not aware, and this is the other thing about the brain body, like people that take my classes, people that have been taking for a long time with me, 20, 30 years, I've never had a single one of them develop frozen shoulder. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but none of them have. I have seen people who've come to me in the midst of having a frozen shoulder and they get beyond it. And it is, you have to retrain your brain that there's not damage here. There's no damage, but the damage comes from stopping moving it. It's called adhesive capsulitis is the actual term. And that means the capsule that surrounds the shoulder, think of it like a little plastic bag that gives the shoulder some extra support, gets kind of glued to the bone itself. And so it freezes up. It just doesn't move and rotate and all that. And it's the one form of pain that you actually have to go into. Like you have to convince your brain, like, I'm actually fine. Like, let me move this shoulder. Prior to that, circling it like pendulum swings to lubricate it first where there isn't any pain. And then you just have to start moving it. But the key is to catch it before it gets to the frozen stage. And that, again, where the brain-body communication is going to help that tremendously, because you're going to recognize early on, like, wow, my shoulder is feeling like really sticky. I'm going to move it. And then that faulty wiring won't develop between the brain and body.
I love that. Yeah, I think that is huge. And, even like I'm thinking of someone in my practice right now where the orthopedist is like, you need an MRI, you're going to need surgery. And it's like, no, this is not like a surgical case here. And then she could not tolerate the MRI because it created anxiety for her. And then she's like, should I, really, and I'm like, I don't really think an MRI is necessary, but like, we do need to really, get on this, man. It's been a few months now. You plateaued with PT, let's bring in some chiro, acupuncture. I like to use radio frequency as well. Like all of the tools to just get things moving. My challenge still with her is like, I want to do a scapular mobilization. And she's just like, no, So there's still that fear that's there. And it's helping to support people kind of feel safe, right? And move past this intense fear that they're literally holding and carrying the weight of the world on their shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, that is the other group that I've worked with a lot is chronic regional pain. And that is specific, that's different than just chronic pain. I work with chronic pain people, but chronic regional pain is also faulty wiring. It's like all of a sudden getting pain, discomfort, heat, swelling in your limbs. And those people eventually, after going to lots of doctors and MRIs and all that, they'll end up at pain clinics. And the issue is not there's no soft tissue injury. It's all related to this faulty wiring. And it's often a stress response. It's years of unmitigated stress.
Yeah, sympathetic, right? They're just oversympathetic, fight or flight, running.
Yeah, and it's like your body's way of kind of like running you into the wall and saying, you have to deal with this. You have to. And so to your point, with those people, it's all about making them feel safe, doing gentle movement, working on breathing, doing movement that challenges them, that then it also makes them feel empowered because that they feel there's nothing like not knowing why your body is painful. Crazy, really.
It's scary, right?
Very.
And it makes you feel old too, right? So I think these are things that are really important to be mindful.
And then doctors, unfortunately, will say, oh, well, you are, 40 years old.
40 something, yeah.
Like the answer. It's a terrible answer.
Horrible answer. We have to wrap up this amazing interview, but I'd love for you to share with people how they can find you and get your classes.
Well, we have an online platform. Our online platform is robust, but there's a free trial. Check it out. And for your listeners, we would love to offer them a special 5 weeks for $5, which is a super good deal. They'll actually get 6 weeks because of that free trial. And just go on there. You'll get some emails that'll kind of guide you through. There's a toggle at the top that says beginner, intermediate, advanced. And that's just the type of class to expect, not that you are one of those people. You're just like what you want to take. Beginner is going to be slow, educational, give you time for the movements, but just really enjoy it. And feel free to reach out to me at any time, Lara@lytyoga.com, with any questions. I'll give you the code for that special discount, and that'll be, I guess, in your show notes.
Yeah, you can share it right now. And what's the website?
The website is lytyoga.com. And the code, when you click on the classes, because that's on a U-Screen page, but the link that I'll share, when you click on it, the code itself is Move Better, all one word.
Move Better is the code to get the 5 weeks for $5. Cool. That's an amazing code. Thank you so much for sharing, Laura, your passion for this and for, really, I think to me, it's that empowerment. Like, hey, we can really live our best lives and we don't have to listen to the noise that's out there that's telling us that we're over 40, so just go out to the pasture and die, please. Or even if you're over 30 or however old you are, pain and dysfunction are never normal. They're not something you have to live with.
Not at all. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode with LYT Method founder Lara Heimann. The LYT Yoga streaming platform offers a direct line to wellness through curated daily live and streaming classes. With a library of over 500 courses available online, now's the perfect time to get started. The LYT Method is a clear and influential roadmap to ignite the spirit for everybody, grounded and designed with the scientific principles of physiology, kinesiology, and neurology. LYT Yoga and Lara are both internationally recognized and have been featured in many outlets, including Inside Edition, Today Show, Yahoo, Shape, and many more. If you want to find out more, check out the LYT Yoga website at lytyoga.com, or you can check Lara out on social media at Lara Heimann. That's at LARAHEIMANN.